If you are anything like me, there is one type of issue that you probably don't tap for very often. Now, when I'm out in the wild and people are asking me about tapping, and I love sharing about tapping, I always say, yes, tapping is this absolutely amazing tool that sometimes feels a little too good to be true because we can tap for emotions in the moment, clearing resistance, clearing limiting beliefs, clearing childhood traumas, clearing generational wounds, clearing physical issues. We go through this amazing list and we talk about it. And as I talk about it in that particular way, when I'm teaching about it, I do the exact same thing. I teach how I can tap for an emotional issue and how I can tap for a physical issue. And even though that's the way I always describe it, even though that's the way I always teach it, I very rarely tap for physical issues. And I would be willing to bet you are very similar to that. Recently, in the last couple of years, I did a survey of my listeners and my readers, and I was asking them how they used tapping, what they wanted to learn, just so I could create content that was more useful. And the interesting thing in that survey was less than 7% of the respondents said they tapped for physical issues. So today in the podcast, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about where that resistance to tapping for physical issues comes from, how we can overcome that resistance, and a really simple 4-step process that you can use so that you are much more likely to use tapping for the amazing, amazing, amazing outcome of improving our physical health. This is Gene Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 635, originally aired October 30th, 2024. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to join me. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. Now, as part of my ongoing program, in addition to teaching the art of delivery classes, one of the things that my students get access to is something called office hours. And basically what happens is 5 times a month, we get together on Zoom and they're allowed to ask me anything. They ask questions about the content that we've been covering this month. They ask questions about using tapping in their daily lives. And they're even allowed to ask for tapping requests so that we get a chance to tap together. So my students get the opportunity and access to tap with me all of the time. And then as a community, we get the opportunity to get some borrowing benefits as we tap with each other around the issues that everybody brings forward. Now, last week, one of the questions from one of my students was around tapping for a physical issue. And she said that she would like to use tapping for physical issues significantly more often, but there's a resistance to do that. And her resistance was, I am worried that if I tap for a physical issue and it doesn't work, then what it's going to do is it's going to undermine my belief in tapping, and I'm not going to use tapping for the emotional stuff that I know it works for. And that's an amazing piece of clarity in finding that really specific resistance. Now, as we had the conversation, we came to the realization that there were actually other things that were getting in the way as well. Now, as I am talking about this, if you are new to tapping and you have no idea what I'm talking about, tapping is this absolutely amazing tool that I use every single day for myself. I use regularly with my clients and my students. And all of those things I listed at the top of this episode are things that I tap for on the regular. The beautiful part about tapping is it can be self-applied and you can learn the basics in under 15 minutes. If you would like to learn how to tap, all you need to do is go to learn2tap.com. We have videos, we have articles, we have very simple training so you can add this to your life right now. That's learn2tap.com. And if you follow the little red arrow in the upper right-hand corner, it will take you to learn2tap.com so you can download and access those resources right away. Now, the interesting thing about tapping for physical issues is the relationship we have to tapping for physical issues versus tapping for emotional issues. So if you are going to sit down for tapping for an emotional issue, we think about that in lots of different ways. I can do emotional first aid for the emotion that I'm feeling right now. I can tap on the resistance that is preventing me from taking action today, the limiting belief that is preventing me from moving forward, the childhood story and childhood trauma that is showing up in this particular moment, the generational trauma that I am carrying with me. And when we tap for a physical issue, we tap for a physical issue. And it's so fascinating that when we think about tapping for emotional issues, as a tapping community, we've done a really good job of creating all of these different layers and all of these different nuances. That if you've been tapping for any length of time at all, you know tapping for frustration in the moment and tapping for a limiting belief, you're going to approach those two things slightly differently, and you're going to have a handle on at least how to start tapping for those particular things. And so we have broken it down into all of these different ideas. Now, when it comes to physical issues, we just kind of lump them all together. I'm going to tap for a physical issue. Now, I could be in a circumstance where I have an injury in my shoulder and my neck. And that injury could come from lots of different places. I could be in a circumstance where I have stress and I'm carrying the weight of the world in my shoulders and in my neck. I could be in a circumstance where I just slept on it wrong. I could be in a circumstance where I pulled the muscle trying to lift something heavy. I could have been injured by something hitting it. It could be an old bruise that's hanging around from a number of weeks ago that is still tender. It could be a torn muscle. It could be I'm a doughy middle-aged man and I wake up and I just ache. Now, every single one of those things is a different type of physical issue. When we think about emotional issues and we've all of these different ways of approaching it, it makes so much sense that it's easy for us to engage with it. Where with the physical things, if we just think of them as this one giant thing, it makes it really, really hard for us to enter into it. The second reason I think that there's resistance or we don't think of reaching for tapping in the way that we would for something emotional is the feedback loop is not as quick. I can tap for something emotional, and by the time I get to the fifth or sixth tapping point, I can already feel release. I was tapping with a client earlier this week, and as we were tapping along and I was doing a little call and response where I was saying a phrase and she was saying it back, between the second to last and last phrase of a round of tapping we did, she literally went, and I could see and I could hear, not just in her sigh, but in her voice afterwards, this huge moment of relief that came. That we can see incremental and we can see big progress almost instantaneously with things that are emotional. With things that are physical, it's different. Now, sometimes I have a headache, I can make the headache diminish. If I have an ache, I can make the ache diminish. But if I'm in a circumstance where I have an injury, very rarely are we in a circumstance where those things spontaneously heal. I mean, I've heard stories of that, but I've never had that. I've never felt that in my body. And so because there is not this immediate feedback from the physical issue, we're less likely to reach for it. In a lot of ways, we are classically conditioned, like Pavlov's dogs and those ringing of the bell. The bell rings, we salivate. When I have something emotional, I reach for tapping because I feel better right away. Where physical things, that's not the case. So when we're in a circumstance where we don't have a huge amount of clarity about how to approach tapping for a physical issue because we've just lumped all of those physical issues together, and we're in a circumstance where we have this feedback loop that is so much slower, it makes so much sense that we don't spend a lot of time tapping for physical issues. So what I want to do right now is I want to share with you a very simple 4-step process that I use to tap for physical issues. And we'll do a little tapping to demonstrate exactly what that's like so that when you, the next time you want to tap for something physical, think about it in these terms, you're going to be in a circumstance where you're much more likely to do it. So step number 1 is tapping for the belief on whether or not it's going to work for a physical issue. Again, in the face of all of those things that we just talked about. So let's do that. So tap on the side of the hand, take a nice big deep breath for me. And just move from tapping point to tapping point, repeating after me. I recognize the fact that when I am tapping for an emotional issue, I get feedback right away. I can feel my emotions change. I can feel my mood shift. I can feel resistance melt away. And so because of my lived experience, tapping for emotional issues feels reasonable, feels believable. Because tapping feels like it is energy. Emotion feels like it's energy. And so the fact that one impacts the other makes a great deal of sense. But physical issues are completely different. Physical issues include injuries in my body, things that take time to heal, things that feel injured forever. And so it makes sense that there is a part of me that resists tapping for physical issues because I don't want to waste time on something that's not going to work. I don't want to waste energy on something that might not work. And it actually feels really weird to believe that tapping on my face and other parts of my body would create physical change. I give myself permission to be open to the possibility that tapping for physical issues might work. I also recognize the fact spending a few minutes tuning into my body, encouraging my body to heal is something that is beneficial. And so if the worst thing that comes out of me tapping for something physical is me being present to what is going on physically, that's a win. And that is worth my time and energy. Nice deep breath. Now, just as we tap through that right now, my entire system just feels more relaxed because I am now in a circumstance where I recognize me just being here is good and useful. Me just being present is good and useful. Me letting go of my expectations and my needs for the tapping to change something physical has been reduced. And so my entire body feels better. And I know in my own life, when I'm less stressed, when I'm less emotional, when I'm less overwhelmed, even if I have physical injury, even if I am sick, then I'm in a circumstance where it doesn't feel quite as bad. Just because my entire body is relaxed and I am okay. So step number one is we just tap on the resistance and concern about tapping working at all. Step number two, what we're going to do is we're going to tune into the emotions that we feel about the issue that is going on. So I have a pain in my neck. How do I feel about that? I've been sick for weeks. How do I feel about that? I have a knee injury that is making it hard for me to move up and down the stairs. So what we're going to do is we're going to tap on the emotional about the issue. Now, the reason I like this is twofold. Number one, more than likely you have a lot more experience tapping for something emotional. I'm frustrated by the fact, I'm disappointed by the fact, I'm overwhelmed by the fact, I'm whatever about the fact. And so it gives me an entryway into what is going on. The second reason is, for me, I love tapping about the emotion about the issue, even if it's an emotional issue before I tap on the root cause itself. You know, I could be in a circumstance where I'm tapping on the fact that I'm really, really distracted. And I am disappointed in myself because I'm really, really distracted. I'm not being productive. So when I'm tapping on being distracted, I'm first going to tap on the emotion about how I feel about that. It's almost like the hard candy shell around the issue that is at hand. So step number 2, what you're going to do is you're going to tap on all of the emotions that you feel. Right now, I am really frustrated by the fact I have this pulled muscle because it hurts. And because it hurts, it makes it harder for me to focus. Makes it harder for me to sit comfortably. It's slowing me down. It's making simple tasks, like walking up and down the stairs, really hard. And because it's getting harder, it makes me believe that my system is breaking down. I'm growing old. This is the beginning of the end. That's all just examples of things we tap on. So think about, what is the emotion that you feel? And so the easiest way to do it is just say the facts as you understand them and how you feel about them. So let's pretend you're just having a conversation with a friend and you're describing whatever is going on with you physically. Oh, I've been sick for so long and I feel like a giant slob and I feel stuck and I'm falling behind and it feels like my body is betraying me, and whatever those things are. And so just tap on that as you work your way through it. So we first tap on our concern about whether or not it's going to work. Second, we tap on the emotion about the issue. The third step is kind of like the second step, but I like to set it aside and actually focus on it as well, because it's a different type of emotion. So oftentimes we have the emotion about what we're experiencing. The other secondary emotion is the rate in which we are healing and how long this has been around. And so we could very easily group that into the previous step, but I find it's easier for me to break them apart, because in step 2, where I'm talking about the emotion of the issue, I'm kind of just like talking about how I feel in the moment and what is going on and how it's impacting me. And for me to ask the question more specifically, how do I feel about the rate of progress? Because oftentimes I am not just disappointed with the fact that I'm injured or I'm sick or I'm dealing with something physical, but I'm frustrated by the fact that it's ongoing. So the third step, what I like to do is I like to tap on the feeling and the emotion about my body's apparent resistance to healing. And it just is something like, I recognize the fact I have been feeling this for a really long time, and I'm disappointed and frustrated because I've experienced this for a really long time. And there's a part of me that is worried that this is now my permanent state. There's a part of me that's worried, if I'm lucky, this is a plateau, where there is the real possibility that not only is this going to continue for a long time, it might actually get worse. And so you can just tap in that particular way for whatever is coming up. Now, you'll notice at the beginning that I said, I've been stuck like this for a really long time. Any amount of pain that you are in feels like it's been a really long time, because there's no fun being in pain. It feels like I've been in pain for a really long time for the last 7 minutes. Well, for the last 7 minutes, that really stings. And so it makes sense for us to engage in that. So we tap on our resistance around tapping and whether or not it's going to work for something physical. We do the emotion about the issue. We do the emotion about how long we've been stuck here, or the fact that we're going to be stuck here forever. And now we tune in and we tap for the actual physical issue itself. Now, here in step 4, we have lots of different approaches we can use. The simplest approach is just go back to the basic recipe like Gary Craig shared with us. This pain in my neck, this pain in my neck, this pain in my neck, this pain in my neck. Now, for me, the problem in tapping in that particular way is by the 5th or 6th tapping point, me just saying this pain in my neck makes it hard for me to stay focused, because the words, as we know, are not magic, but the words are a focusing tool to help us to engage with what is going on. So for me, when I'm doing something like that, I have a whole bunch of questions I ask myself. How much does the pain weigh? Is there an epicenter? If I were to look at it from a three-dimensional way, how would I describe it? If I held it in my hand, how much would it weigh? If I painted a picture of it, what color would it be? So I have this whole list of questions that I go through that allow me to do that. The third way that I would do this is I would do guided imagery. So like if I have this little pain in my neck, as I'm tapping, I would actually imagine a little team of tiny little Lilliputian-sized massage therapists coming in and working on that. If it felt like it was a wound, I would imagine it being healed. But I would use a tool such as guided imagery to do that, which is significantly more sophisticated, but can be super, super powerful. So again, all we're doing is we're tapping on our resistance about whether or not it'll work. We're tapping on the emotion about the issue. We're tapping on how long it has been here or how long it will stay in the emotion that comes along with that. And then we're going to tap for the physical issue itself. Now, to make this even easier for you, I have created a little checklist for you that has all 4 of these steps. And in step number 4, I include all 13 of the questions that I like to use when I am tuning in and I'm focusing. If you would like to receive that, all you need to do is go to tappingqanda.com/PTC. tappingqanda.com/PTC, that stands for Physical Tapping Checklist. And I have a free little checklist right there for you that will walk you through all of this and then share all of the questions I use in that 4th step to help me to focus and tune in, because me just saying this pain in my leg, this pain in my leg, this pain in my leg isn't super effective for me because my mind starts to wander. So that is how I like to tap for physical issues. That is why I think we don't tap for physical issues as much as we should. It's because we just don't have a lot of clarity around that. And so the simple 4-step process, I think, is going to make it so much easier for you, because it's not trying to figure out how do I tap for this big thing, but it gives you the opportunity in those first 3 steps to gently sneak up on that. If you know someone in your life who could appreciate a resource like this, please pass it along. Be our ambassador. We always joke about the fact that our marketing budget is your word of mouth. You might know someone in your life who could use this. And if you pass it along to them and they don't listen, they don't watch, they don't engage, that's okay. The fact that you've reached out and said, hey, this might make your day a little bit better, will make their day better because they know you are thinking of them. I know how cheesy that sounds. It feels cheesy to say it every single time, but it is absolutely true, and you know it is true as well. As you look at the screen right now, you can see all the past episodes of the Tapping Q&A podcast. Click on that playlist, dive back in. There's hundreds of hours of training waiting there just for you. I look forward to talking to you and tap with you again real soon. Bye-bye.